Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Southeast Agriculture and Natural Resources Division of Aggie Horticulture and the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension team. We're here to give you one excellent information to help improve the skills that you have in gardening and your interest in horticulture. I'll be leading off this program very quickly, but before we get to the presenter, Stephen Janak, I want to go over a few housekeeping rules with everyone. As a courtesy to the presenter, if you have your microphone on, we ask that you please mute your microphone, as well as any video feed that you have. A video feed from external sources can interfere with the presentation and sometimes stall or make the presentation that you're watching a little glitchy. So we ask that you please mute your microphone as well as your video camera. I'm Stephen Bruggerhoff, horticulturist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension System and a part of the team of Aggie horticulturists and specialists that are bringing quality programs to you. Gardening Gulf Coast series. We'll be leading off today, of course, with Stephen Janak, fruit specialist with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, and he will be talking about understanding soils. This program is being recorded and will be available at a later date for you as well as the general public to view at your leisure. In the meantime, we'll also be sending a survey to you after the program. We want to keep a pulse on the product and the service that we're providing to you. So if you could please follow through and answer any questions that we provide to you in survey after the program. Little sneak peek for what's happening next month. At the end of this month, yours truly will be providing a program on ginger, a little bit of tropical flair next Wednesday at the same time, 10 o'clock. But we look forward to hosting more programs for you in September, leading off with soil amendments from our horticulture agent in Jefferson County with David Oates, followed by September 16th, turf maintenance, Michael Potter from Montgomery County, September 23rd, herbs for the coastal garden by Kevin Gibbs from Nueces County. I'll be following up in September, at the end of September, with citrus varieties appropriate for Gulf Coast gardening. All right, folks. That's all I've got. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Stephen Janak. He is our horticulture specialist in specializing in fruits, and he'll be talking about understanding soils with you today.
Good morning. Can everybody see my cluttered desktop?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Let me pull this up. And I don't have a webcam on me today, so you won't get to see my lovely face, but it's okay because we're going to do some things on the computer, not just a slideshow here, but in a little while we're going to go to the internet as well. I'm going to show you some things on there that hopefully are useful for you. So my name is Stephen Janak. I have an office here in Hallettsville, Texas, kind of mid-coastal region. My specialty is studying fruit trees, particularly olives, blackberries, pears, table grapes, pomegranates, and a couple others. But I have a passion for soil. I'm not a soil specialist, I'm not a soil expert, but I have devoted some of my own personal time to studying and better understanding soils and how soil properties can influence and make a large difference in your potential success in your horticultural endeavors. So we're going to talk about understanding soils on the Texas Gulf Coast and then the use of the SoilWeb app. So we all know soil is extremely important. It's the base of our societies, really. I like this quote here from Paul Harvey. Despite all our accomplishments, we owe our existence to a 6-inch layer of topsoil and the fact that it rains. And that's really true. The majority of plant-soil interactions happens in that top 6 to 12 inches. We know now today that roots can go much deeper, but really that top 6 inches has a lot to do with your potential success. Okay, so we need to have a basic understanding of soils, and hopefully most of you are familiar with this. Soils are extremely complex. There are many many variations. There's about 1,300 soil series in Texas. That's not soil types. That's groups of soil types. There's about 1,300 in the state. And each soil type is recognized as unique, just like humans. We may all have some similarities, but we all have something different that makes us unique. And each soil is the same. Soil types are that way. Soil formation, we need to understand, is influenced by many factors. By the parent material, okay, the bedrock that it originated from, the local climate and that climate's impact on the bedrock and on the soil. How much rainfall do we get? Is there freezing and thawing that goes on, etc. The relief or the slope of the land has an impact on the soil type, whether that soil type is susceptible to erosion and things like that. The formation of soil is also influenced by organisms in the soil, whether that be macroorganisms such as moles and gophers that some of you might find in your sandier soils, or the microorganisms that we don't often see and don't often think about. And the final influence on soil formation is time. We know that, I think the old rule is it takes about 100 years to develop or form new soil from parent material. It takes about 100 years to form about the thickness of a dime of new soil. So when we lose maybe an inch of soil in one heavy rainfall, that you could say will take maybe 1,000 years to replace, just because it's so slow to form soil. But we didn't always know this, and so we need to go back to understand the classification of soils and its impact on us. We need to go back and understand a little bit about how we came to this point. I'll get my slide to go. So here, the soil survey. This is the information that we'll be using, the information from the soil survey. So prior to the 1900s, 120 years ago, we knew very, very, very little about soil. There were some records that maybe as far back as 3000 BC, the Chinese were trying to do some soil mapping and classification, but their understanding was very limited. The first people that studied soil in the US and in Europe and abroad were typically geologists. These were folks that studied rocks. They tried to classify the soils based on the types of rock they found in the soil. They thought whatever rock was found there, that's an indication of the type of soil that developed. And we know today that identifying the types of rocks and soil can help classify the soil, but that's not necessarily going to point us in the direction of the right type of soil. The early investigators were also influenced by their faith, and I thought this was interesting. They tried to explain, for example, the glacial deposits in the northeastern U.S. If you remember historical geology, the ice sheet that covered northern North America, the glacial deposits there, they tried to explain that with accounts of the Great Flood, right, the story from the Bible. So they didn't fully understand soil formation at that time, but they used the information they had. There were disagreements about how soil should be classified. Should it be classified on the physical properties, the size of soil particles, the amount of water that the soil can hold, or should it be classified more on the chemical properties? What is the pH of the soil? What is the native fertility? How much nutrients does the soil hold? They also thought maybe it should be based on vegetation. So there was disagreement in all these ways they thought they might classify it. And eventually you'll see they ended up classifying soils based on all of these, physical, chemical properties, the vegetation there, and some other things. So the soil survey started in 1899. It was a partnership of federal and state agencies led by the Division of Soils, which went through many name changes. Today we know that division as the Natural Resource Conservation Service, NRCS. And they worked with state experiment stations, including the 10 run by Texas A&M in Texas. Their first total budget in 1899 was $16,000, but they mapped 720,000 acres that first year. That was a big achievement, they thought. But we're going to find out that in later years, as they got more detailed in their collection of data, that number of acres they were mapped in a single year would significantly drop. But there's this soil paradigm. The paradigm is that to understand the soil, well, we need to dig in and map it and get our hands on it and classify it. But to classify it and to understand it, and to map it, we need to know how to do that. So it's kind of the horse before the cart, or the cart before the horse type of thing. What I'm saying is it was a little bit of a struggle at first to get it grappled on what exactly they needed to know about the soil. So if you can imagine, early 1900s, surveyors going out, horse and buggy, or maybe some of the first vehicles, and taking measurements and taking samples. So here's a guy in 1941 checking the slope of the land in this one spot. So they did a lot of this just by true manpower. The first way they started classifying soils was by texture. And so we should all recognize this classification. Texture is the percent of sand, silt, and clay particles in the soil. So sand particles are the biggest ones. Silt particles are medium sized, basically, and clay particles are the smallest sized particles of soil that we know. They started giving local names to these soils. That became their second category of classification. So you'll see later on, as we start to look at soil maps, they have names such as Hallettsville fine sandy loam. So they classified it on the texture, fine sandy loam, but they also used local names to give it, again, they recognize the uniqueness of soils in a particular location. So we have fine sandy loam all over the soil, but this one is the Hallettsville fine sandy loam. So they started using local names. And you can see by 1912, they identified 1,650 soil types, and that number just continued to rise very quickly. But they learned more with each new survey as the acreage expanded, and they realized as they learned more that they would need to go back and update that early previous work. So again, that's kind of the paradigm that I'm talking about. By 1911, they added a few more categories to classify. They looked at the color of the soil. That tells us a lot about drainage. So then they looked at drainage of the soil, internal drainage, how fast does water move through and how fast does water move over the top. Organic matter in the soil they looked at. They started to understand oxidation in the soil. They started to also give these land capability classifications, and that was a little bit of a sticking point, because here you had this government agency coming through surveying your land, whether that be private or commercial or farmland, and they said, okay, this land is capable of producing X number of tons of crops. So this land over here, it's such a poor soil type that it's not suited for producing X number of tons of crop. And some people took issue with that, because all of a sudden, again, you had this agency coming in and saying, well, your land is not prime farmland. Your land is not worth. And so that affected property values, and there was some hoopla about all this. So it was interesting times in the early days. Then they also looked at erosion. They tried to lump these groups of soils into provinces at first, but these provinces were huge. They were, for example, from one of them went from Miami to Montana. They thought the soils in this general area had some similarities. Today, we know that there's way too many differences in that large of an area to try and lump that amount of land together. Their accuracy was terrible in the early days, although so was their understanding of soils and the unique changes that can happen in a small area. For example, they mapped only 2 soil types in a 736 square mile area in Mississippi. Today, we know that there's probably a lot more. You can have 1 acre of land, like my house, and you can have 2 soil types on that 1 acre of land. Just a little more history here. They started laying out a basis for classifying soils like biological organisms. So in biology, we have this, hopefully you remember from high school, this domain, kingdom, phylum, class, and so on. Well, they did something similar in soils. They started to classify them based on order. That was the biggest group. The next smallest group is suborder, and then great group, subgroup, family, and series. Remember, I told you about those 1,300 soil series in the state. In 1975, they finally published a comprehensive classification system that everybody could agree upon. That's been updated periodically. In fact, the newest volume was published in 1999. It's called Soil Taxonomy. It's only 886 pages, folks. It's light reading, and they're still making changes. That again, I don't mean to bore you with the history of soils, but I want you to understand where we came from and the complexity that we're dealing with when we talk about individual unique soil types. So it's 800 pages just to tell a person how to classify a certain soil type. So obviously we can't cover all of that today. I'm going to try to give you the quick things that you need to know that's going to impact you. One neat thing, in 2010, after 111 years, the soil survey in Texas was announced completed. They had mapped 171 million acres in Texas. To commemorate this event in November of 2010, they collected a monolith, what you see there in the picture on the right, of Houston black clay. And they recognized this soil as a soil that had importance for the state of Texas based on its agricultural production and the history of production on those types of soils in the state. So those of you in the Houston area, maybe along the coast as well, and even some of you between the coast and the hill country, some of you are familiar with this Houston black clay if you live in the Blackland prairies, or like I said, towards Houston and along the coast. So the soil survey in you, it can help you determine the limitations of your soil. What plants or crops might be suitable to grow in that soil? What amendments might be needed? What's the potential for erosion if you are to manage that soil or to till it or to do something to it? What's the potential that you may lose soil to erosion? There's much more that it can tell you. And there's different ways to access. Of course, visit your local NRCS office. They should have maps. They should be able to sit down and do with you what I'm doing with you today. Go through the map, explain things, and help you make decisions. We're going to talk about Web Soil Survey, and we're also going to talk about the SoilWeb browser. However, there are some limitations to the survey. And these are just practical things. There's the soil type boundary lines are not exact and precise. There's no straight lines in nature. Everything kind of blends together and has crooked lines. So there's no clear boundaries between soil types. Even though you look at the map and there's a clear yellow line drawn where the soil type changes, and you can go out and if you really investigate, you can see where they came up with that line. But again, there's no clear boundary. There's mixing that goes on between those soil types. And the maps aren't 100% accurate. They're really pretty good, 99% accurate, but occasionally or rarely, you'll go out and you'll find that the soil type on the map does not exactly correlate with what you have beneath your feet that you're looking at. So they're not perfect, but they're really pretty darn good. The big thing is two of the big things they don't account for past or recent human impact. So if you buy a piece of land and you're expecting it to be, the soil map shows that it should be a low pH, 5.5 pH. When you go out and you investigate, you test the soil, it comes back as a 7 pH. Well, maybe somebody in the past has lined that soil. So the soil type and soil maps don't account for this type of human activity. The big one for most of you is that it doesn't account for soil movement or redistribution. So those of you living in subdivisions or houses that were built up on fill soil or fill dirt that was brought into low-lying areas, the soil maps don't take that into account, especially since they were done pre-2000s. They don't account for a lot of this soil that was brought in. So you go outside your house, the map says you should have this type, you start digging, and it's something completely different, right? But you may dig down 2 feet, and then you may find that layer, that original soil level that they started building on. So there's your original soil, but just want you to know that that is a limitation of the soil maps, is it does not take into account those types of changes. So we're going to go to the web quickly here. I want to show you, this is the Natural Resource Conservation Service home web page. And if you look right down here at the middle, there's a button that says Soil Survey. You can click that, or you can just type in Soil Survey on Google and it'll take you there. So here is the Web Soil Survey online tool run by USDA. You can click on this, and I guess we can do that. here. And this is an excellent tool. It houses all of the information that USDA has on soil types in the US. And my theory is that because it houses so much information, it's a bit slow to work. You can see it's loading. It took a while to load the page. There's lots of buttons. So it's an extremely powerful tool that you can use. But it's a bit slow, it's a bit cumbersome, and it's not exactly what I would consider user-friendly. You kind of have to understand exactly what you have to understand the program before you can really make use of it. So I just wanted to show you here's something that the USDA website can do that other sites cannot, based on the amount of detail they provide. So I mapped out Colorado County, this is where I live, and I had to define this area that I wanted to study, and then I went over here and I said, show me all of the soil types classified based on their farmland, whether they are prime farmland, kind of mediocre farmland, or not considered prime farmland. And so you can see that drawn out here on the map. The green soils represent prime farmland. The blue soils are somewhere in between, not prime, but still useful, and the red soils are classified as not prime farmland. That doesn't mean you can't grow anything. There's lots of good agriculture, horticulture going on in these red areas. It just means that it's not prime. It has a few limitations to its use. So that's the USDA. I've got the same thing here. What I want to show you now is a little bit easier way. So I'm just going to go to Google here, and I'm going to type SoilWeb. I'm just going to search like that. I've gone to it before. That's why it's purple here. But you can even go to this California. So this SoilWeb is developed by UC Davis in California, and they have several apps. This is the one that we're going to be using today. It's the most easy to use, is SoilWeb. You can even use SoilWeb Earth. It's a little more fancy. It's kind of like Google Earth. There's a couple other tools on here that we're not going to look at today. So let's look at SoilWeb. So when you click on it, it drops you automatically here at Davis, California. In fact, here's the UC Davis campus. So don't let that confuse you. The thing I like about this tool is it works more like Google Maps. You can click and drag. You can use your scroll on your mouse to zoom in and out on farmland in California. On this map, there is no click and drag. You need to zoom in on an area, and then I box in or draw in the area that you want to study. And again, it's a little cumbersome. This one is easy. I'm going to scroll out of California, get back home to Texas, and I want to show you a couple of things. So I'm going to go to a piece of property that I'm already familiar with. Use Colorado County. Okay, let me back up a second. I know this is probably a little bit of lag time for those of you watching, so I'm going to give it a second for all of our computers to catch up. Okay, so you see the lines drawn on the land, on the satellite view here. Those yellow lines delineate different soil types on the map. So if you think soil types are similar and continuous over large areas, you can see now just how much variation there can be in a small area. I'm going to go back and zoom in on my field. Okay, so this is where the real investigation starts. So we see this, and hopefully you guys can see the letters here. This letters TMC. I'm going to just click on that area. It drops a red X, brings up the soil type here on the left. So that easy. We found out what soil type is within this boundary. It's the Tremona fine sand. It's 1 to 5% slopes. And you see this 90% here and 10% here. That's what I was talking about earlier with the mixing. It's not pure Tremona soil. There's some influence from nearby soils, nearby unnamed soil, or they haven't specified which soil types nearby are influencing it. They're just saying it's 90%, and that's really good enough to get us started. So you click on that Tremona, right away, it brings up this nice little picture of what the typical profile looks like. It even gives you the colors of what it might look like. It even kind of shows you the depth of the soil. Click on organic matter, shows these nice charts. So this soil here, they are claiming starts at about 0.7% organic matter. You can see how the organic matter drops as we go deeper into the soil. That's expected. We can look at clay content. So this Tremona fine sand has very little clay in the top. It says 50 centimeters. This is 100 centimeters. That's about 20 inches, about 40 inches, about 60 and about 80 inches. It typically shows you the top 80 inches. So we can see in this soil, we have a very low clay percentage down to about 20, 25 inches. And then the clay percentage jumps way up to 40%. And then gradually decreases as it goes down. So that's already very useful information if you're going to be planting a certain tree in your yard, or you want to start a small orchard. You want to go out and find which soil here, this is my property, which soil here is going to be best. Where am I going to have the most chance for success based on soil type? Let's look at sand. So sand mimics clay, it mirrors clay, right? We have a very high percentage of sand, drops off at the 25-inch mark, and then it stays fairly consistent after that. There's a couple other interesting things on here. KSAT, okay, you say, what the heck is KSAT? Well, it's got a nice little question mark here. You can figure it out. Click on it. It gives you the information, okay? So this is a measurement of the saturated hydraulic conductivity. That is just the ease with which pores of a saturated soil transmit water. So to me, this is a measurement of internal soil drainage. When that soil is soaking wet, how fast does water still continue to move through it? That's going to give you a good indication of drainage, which we all should know is very important to lots of our horticultural crops. We need to have excellent drainage. So we can see how that measurement mimics our texture, right? We had sand up here in the top 25 inches. It dropped off and the clay content rose sharply at 25 inches here. And so our movement of water in that through that soil drops to zero, or probably almost zero. It does move through. And we don't need to get caught up in these numbers down here. You know, we're not soil scientists or engineers building an overpass or something. We just need to know some general information for our horticultural needs. So I'm not too worried about the numbers of clay or the millimeters per hour water can flow through. I just want to know, okay, I got good drainage, and then boom, something happens at 25 inches. I've got this limitation at 25 inches in my soil. We can look at pH. This is about a 5.5, stays about a 5 all the way down. So I know that I'm on the acid side. I'm not alkaline. There's a couple other things. You can look at K factor again. These are a little bit less useful, these ones down here. So we're not going to go through them in detail. Let's scroll down and look around. So here's that taxonomy I talked about, the order, suborder, grade group. We don't need to get totally caught up in these. What I want you to look at is the family. And so this family says clay, mixed, active, thermic, aquic, arenic, calistals. So there's lots of weird words in there. We don't need to get caught up on exactly what all of them mean. What I want you to recognize is this term aquic. And so we don't even need to be soil scientists to know that aquic is related or kind of has a meaning towards water, right? We say aquic, we think of water. So you can go and you can do some Google search and type aquic family soils, and you can find the information that says when this term aquic is included, then this soil that we're looking at has potential to stay saturated for a significant period of time during the growing season, which might impact growth of crops. And so that's very general, very broad, but that to me points to the potential for saturated conditions when I'm trying to grow something here. So that makes sense, right? We looked at how fast water moves through, and we know that water does not move much at all at that 25-inch layer. So what if we get enough rain that it fills the top 25 inches and then it keeps raining? Where's the water go? It goes nowhere. So we have this saturated condition. So that may be, again, another limitation to this soil type growing whatever it is that you want to grow. We can look a little further down here. A couple important ones I want you to notice. I talked about capability classifications. And so they have a scale 1 through 8, 1 being prime farmland, has no limitations to growing crops, and 8 being it's extremely limited. It's got lots of issues and limitations that are gonna make growing something very hard. And okay, maybe we don't know what the 3E means. Well, you can click on it. This gives you some general information, but doesn't exactly explain it. They have another link here to land capability classification. It goes through, hopefully everybody's caught up. Hopefully this is loading for everybody. So it goes through the capability classes. Class 1, soils that have few limitations that restrict their use. I'm just going to go quickly. Class A, soils have limitations that preclude their use for commercial plant production and restrict their use to wildlife or recreation. We want to know what that E meant, so we go to subclasses, and maybe I can zoom in for you guys. Right here, subclass E, which is what that soil we looked at, is susceptible to erosion. Soils where susceptibility to erosion is the dominant problem or hazard or limitation to their use. So that's what I mean about this side is pretty user-friendly. You don't have to be a soil scientist to go in and find some useful information about the soils on your land. Or what I get a lot of is people coming to me and saying, well, I want to plant 10 acres of pecan trees, and I want to go buy some land to do this and retire on the land. Where should I buy some land or look for land, or what kind of land should I be looking for? Well, here you go. Here's a great resource. We can look further down at some of the more information here. I give you some erosion factors and runoff factors. Here's drainage. Extremely important, like we talked about. So this soil is somewhat poorly drained. Well, that correlates nicely to what we've just talked about. Hydrologic group basically defines how fast water can move into the soil. Here's a nice one, total plant available water. So how much water can the soil store? Well, this one says 25 centimeters. Okay, so let's look at a different soil. I'm going to go hopefully to the other extreme. So I click down here, this Whitesboro sandy clay loam. Let's look at it. So different colors, different stratas, clay content starts out a little bit higher and gets gradually higher, but there's no large jump. Sand, it kind of wiggles around, but there's no huge significant changes. It's fairly nice, deep, fairly consistent soil. We look at this KSAT, right? This how fast does water move through it? Nice and consistent all the way down. Again, I'm not getting caught up on the numbers. I just know that 0 is down here and I'm not at 0. And so this soil has nice drainage all the way through 80 inches. Okay. We can look further down here. This family description does not say anything about aquic, so we know that saturation is not usually an issue. Look at the capability class. It's rated a little bit better capability. It has a 2 versus the 3 that we looked at earlier. But it has the W. And if you would go back and read what we looked at a minute ago, that W means, well, it has potential to flood. So there is a creek right here, a little stream, and occasionally that stream comes over its banks, and this bottom land right here is flooded occasionally. Moderately well drained, it says. Look at the plant available water, 32 centimeters. So this little bit better soil down here in the bottom has better capability for storing water for plant use. I want to zoom out quickly and show you guys. I did some looking around before we started. I wanted to find a soil that was excellent. Yes, here we go. Okay, let me get this all cleared up for you guys. Even this is loading a little bit. That may be due to all of us being on the internet together on this call. Well, it's not loading for me for some reason. Here we go. But right here in the middle of the map, I know it's blurry and still loading. Right here in the middle of the map is the Colorado River. So we have river bottom on both sides. River bottom is known for being prime farmland. I clicked on this farm field right here. BG is Bergstrom silt loam, rarely flooded. We'll click on it. Nice, dark, deep profile. You see that conductivity of water, nice and consistent, 80 inches through the soil. Clay, there's no huge jumps and changes in the type of clay. And look at the capability class. It's rated as a 1, right there, 1 with no subclass rating. So it has basically what they're telling me is no restrictions to growing crops. It is prime farmland. Like they say, it's well drained. Look at the plant available water, 36 centimeters. That's more than any of the other soils we looked at. So I hope you can see how this tool is useful. It normally loads a lot quicker, a lot better. Maybe just that all of us are on this call at once. So this is what that Tremona soil, this is what happens to it. In fact, I have the same soil at my house. This is from my house. We had about a 3-inch rain. I have that clay layer at about 2 feet and water purchase on top of that clay layer because it just does not move through that heavy clay layer. So in addition to the SoilWeb app, and I should mention too, the SoilWeb that we just looked at is not just available on the computer. It's also available as an app. I believe it's available for both iPhone and Android phones. So when I go out and make property visits and visit a farmer or a homeowner, that's one of the first things I do. Pull out my phone, open the SoilWeb app, and it's got a nice button you click that just says, show me the soils at my current location, and it brings it up right there. In addition to that, excuse me, what are some practical soil investigation that you can do? The big one, again, like we said, is checking soil water drainage. So we have this nice little rule here. You dig a hole about 32 inches deep, about 8 inches wide. You do this when the soil is moist, not when we're in a drought like right now, not when we just received a few inches of rain. You want to do it with average moisture. Fill that hole. It usually takes 5 to 7 gallons, but fill it to the top, and then watch how long it takes to drain. If it drains completely in 1 to 8 hours, your drainage is very good. It's excellent. And you can see as that drainage gets longer, well, our potential for horticultural success starts to go down. It gets marginal. If the water stays in that hole more than 2 days, this is probably not a great site to try to plant crops directly into the soil. If you're a homeowner and you want to grow stuff on this type of soil, knowing this information right here about drainage can tell you, well, I should probably plant all of my stuff up on raised burns or in raised beds so that they have additional drainage because my soil is not well drained. There's a couple of other guides that you can use that are online, and I believe that we're going to provide you links to these guides. Estimating the soil texture just by feel. This is probably a nice, useful one, estimating soil moisture by feel and appearance. A lot of us have trouble, even me, determining, well, does that tree need water right now, or is my soil still moist enough? Well, dig in and find out. That's the only way to really know. And so they have a nice fact sheet to show you what soil looks like when it's moist, when it has enough water, when it's getting low in water, and when it's dry. So we'll provide those to you. At this time, we've gone about almost 40 minutes. I don't want to keep talking so much, but I will answer any questions now if there are any further questions.
All right. Yes, David, thank you very much. There is one question that I thought was interesting. You mentioned that the tool, the SoilWeb app, can be used to determine a propensity for flooding. Could also the same be said for the propensity for drought?
Yes. Excuse me. And that gets a little more involved. This family description right here, if y'all are still seeing my screen, this term here, thermic, describes kind of the moisture regime. Again, you would have to go in and kind of do some investigation to understand what all these terms mean. But there are other terms that mean that this soil stays extremely dry. In fact, we can show you that real quick. I'm just going to click, go out to West Texas on a soil type, and let's say that one right there, Pintas, thermic, typic. These descriptions right here tell us about the soil moisture regime, whether it's real susceptible to drought or whether it receives more rainfall and stays more wet. Also, when you can go to the Soil Data Explorer, we didn't even look at these things on top, but you can go up here and it's going to open another page and give you lots of more detailed information. Somewhere in here, it also talks about how much rainfall is typically received. You can find that out with simple Google, but it'll also tell you in here how much rainfall you normally receive. So it's not as great for determining propensity to drought as it is for flooding and saturation, but it can give you some idea.
Excellent. Two more quick questions. One's a quick question. The other one is maybe a little bit more complex, and then please proceed on, sir. Water holding capacity, is this per cubic foot?
That's a good question. I do not know. I think, that's an excellent question. I really don't know the answer to that. I could find out. Again, my point of the whole thing was, I'm not too worried about the exact numbers. Just knowing that one has higher water storage capacity than another soil, that gives me enough information to start making some decisions on potential land use. But I don't, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to your question. I wanted to show you one thing here. Here's an olive orchard that I work with. If you guys are still seeing, here's an olive orchard I work with in Southwest Texas. And you can see where the lines are drawn. So you can hopefully see the lines of trees going diagonal here. Well, look where she planted trees and the trees died. Well, if we would have clicked on that, it shows that this area is a heavy clay. It's frequently flooded. It's called a floodplain. The clay content is like 70%. Doesn't store much water. It's well drained, but it's flooded. It's rated as a 5, and water W for water problems. So she lost her trees here because she planted in a soil type that was extremely limiting to horticultural crops. And I just wanted to show how that does hold true. You can see the lines aren't perfect, but you can definitely see the general correlation between the soil type changes and and the success of the orchard.
One last question, Stephen. So far, what kind of soil is best for prairie restoration?
What kind of soil is best for prairie restoration? Well, it's kind of complex as well. It's probably easiest in prime farmland soils because those soils have very few limitations. They store water well, but they're well drained. The reason I say that's complex is prairies grow where prairies grow, and if that land was classified as a prairie before European settlement and we built houses or turned it to brushland, then prairie restoration should happen there. But if you're talking about, okay, I have this piece of land right here and I want to restore prairie on it, where should I start? That's a different question. Now you can say, well, I've got this piece of land. Let me start in the area that has the best chance of success for prairie restoration. So I'll go through and look at the different soil types and, again, probably make a lot of the decisions on this capability class. What are they classified as? What are the limitations to it? And I would start my restoration there, but prairies grow even in the poorest soils. You just have to know how to match the types of plants. And you can do that. Again, we can get real involved. There's so much information on here, but you can go to this ecological site description and it'll pull up and eventually you can play around on their website here and it'll show you a list of plants and trees and grasses that are supposed to grow in that soil type or that historically grew in that soil type. So there's lots of So here's the dominant plant species: trees, shrubs, grasses that grew. You can get the full description, and it has a lot more specifics on plant species that are supposed to grow there. Is there anything else? Can you ameliorate soil for prairie restoration? That's a great question. I don't know, Lynn. I mean, I do know somewhat, but that's going to depend on what the problem is and just the logistics of bending that soil, what it needs. But yes, you can. I would say it's just how logistically practical is it. I'm not a prairie restoration expert, so that would be a good question for your local agent or the NRCS office. There's a lot more helping folks with prairie restoration, so contact your local USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, and they should be able to give you some additional help. Okay. River water capacity is often stated for a common depth of rooting. Well, that's what I thought. It was the amount of water you can hold in that 60-inch depth. Huh. See, we all learned something today. Remove the pecan tree, now no drainage. Is this due to clay soil or that tree no longer removes moisture? I would say yes. Both have an impact. The largest impact is definitely just from the soil type. But yes, a large mature pecan tree can probably remove 100 to 200 gallons a day when you think about times like July and August. So yeah, that has an impact for sure, but again, the soil is the largest determining factor of soil drainage, water drainage. So I'll do both. You're welcome, Nancy. Happy to help. Let me put up, here's my information again, folks. If you ever want to reach out to me on fruit trees in this Gulf Coast area, olives, I work heavily with olives. If you have soil questions, you just want to talk about soils or something, feel free. And that's my cell phone number, and that's my email address.
So Stephen, if you could please, we're not getting a view of your information. If you could please share that.
I thought I was.
I can see it.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, it may be a little slow with 60 some or less on here. And yeah, that's me. Eating peaches as a kid. So I've been involved in horticulture and agriculture a long time. Well, thank you for everybody that tuned in. Like I said, reach out to me if you have further questions, but I think we're going to wrap it up for today. I'll be sending a survey to everyone, so please feel free to please take the time to fill out this anonymous survey just to give us a little feedback on how we're doing.
All right, thank you very much, Stephen. Thank you very much for your expertise and presentation on using the soil survey as a valuable tool for each one of us, whether we're working in developing a farm, an orchard, or even our own home landscape. We want to thank all of the viewers who are joining us today for the Gardening on the Gulf Coast series. It's been excellent to serve you for the past couple of months. We're going to continue on with the program. Next Wednesday, the 26th, I believe, I'll be giving this is Stephen Brugger, a horticulturist with Brazoria County. I'll be providing a presentation On ginger, a little bit of tropical flair for your home environment. We'll be following up in September. We're going to be taking a brief hiatus on the first Wednesday of September, but we'll be following up on the 9th of September with a little bit of information about amending soil from our county horticulture agent in Jefferson County. And then we'll be proceeding through the rest of the month. We thank you so much for joining us. Remember, we have recorded this presentation, will be available to you. We'll also be sending you out a brief survey on today's presentation. We want to keep a pulse on serving you in the best capacity that we can, get an idea of what you've learned from today's presentation. So look out for an email containing a link to that video, as well as to a survey that we would love to have your participation in. Thank you so much for joining us today for Gardening on the Gulf Coast series. We'll see you next week.